Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rave Social Podcast. I'm your host, Jaiden, and today we have a very special guest, Victoria. Do you like to go by Victoria or do you like to go by Tori?
I go by both. Most people call me Tori, but like my professional name is Victoria.
Okay, awesome. She's so great. We've been friends on social media for a while. She did a beautiful reading for me a couple months ago when I was first launching Intentional Instagram, where she predicted my relationship. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And now I'm engaged and we have Tori on the podcast, and we are going to talk a little bit about allowing your business to be a spiritual part of your life. We're going to talk about rituals and just kind of see where the conversation takes us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and who you serve and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Jaiden. First of all, thanks for inviting me on. I'm super excited to be here. I am a brand designer and I'm also a tarot reader, and sometimes I do those things together. I read specifically for entrepreneurs as often as possible, and your reading was one of my favorites I've ever done because it was just so glowy and positive and fun. And then, yeah, we've been able to sit back and watch it all come true, which is always a deeply satisfying process.
Yes, it was so awesome.
Yeah. So I generally work with people in the beauty, the mystic, and the wellness areas, but I'll work with just about anybody who sees their business as kind of a part of their spiritual purpose, something they're spiritually connected to. We all probably have like a deeper reason for why we're running the business we are, our why, as they frequently call it. And so when that why dips into sort of like a spiritual realm, that's when I show up, and that's when I get excited.
Yeah, I love that so much. And thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the podcast. And I'm sure everyone's going to love this conversation. So why don't we talk a little bit about, I guess, the first side of that, which is like allowing your business to be a spiritual part of your life. I feel like in the past, we've been told like you need to separate work from your life. And that kind of feels like the opposite. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe this is just me. I have kind of like the kind of obsessive all or nothing personality, where when I'm really interested in something, I want to make it my whole life or a big part of my life. And the thing with work is like, if you're doing a 40-hour work week, if you're like devoting that kind of time for, the span until like 60 when people traditionally retire, if you're spending that big of a chunk of your life on something, it better be something you can stand behind,
So real.
and something that kind of lights you up, especially if you are running your own business, because how else are you going to stay self-motivated? Maybe somebody can, but it's not me personally. I need to have that kind of undercurrent of feeling like there are angels, there are guides, someone wants me to be doing this, and there is somebody who's gaining something from this, and that it's purposeful, and that it's driving my spirit forward and making me a better person,
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. And I haven't ever thought of it in terms of spirituality like that, but I've always thought of it as like you spend more time working, like the average American, I will say, spends more time with their coworkers and working than they do doing anything else in their lives. And like that's why I always encourage people to like, you have to do something you at least enjoy doing most of the time, because how could you spend 75% of your life doing something you hate? Like that's no way to live.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that like if you don't have a spiritual connection to what you're doing, that's okay. Whatever, everybody's different. But if you feel like it has that like greater weight in your life, I don't think there should be shame. I don't think you should feel the need to separate. I think you can allow all the different beautiful pieces of your life to flow together into one big
Yeah.
river of your existence, you know?
Yeah, it's so true because it is just like who you are. It becomes a huge part of your life. If somebody is listening to this and they're thinking like that sounds nice, like maybe they are like into spirituality or whatever, but they haven't been able to tap into it in a business sense, like where would you say they should start?
I would start with habits that you are already doing in your business and just reframing them as rituals. So for you, for example, you're a social media manager, right? So you're
Yeah.
posting already. So if you had a centering moment right before you posted where you did some kind of ritual, had some kind of prayer or crystal or some kind of intention setting to magnetize the content that you made to as many eyes as possible, and then you released it into the world, you're already doing it. It's really just adding
Yeah.
that layer of intention and making it more meaningful for you.
I love that so much. And I feel like other people, like any service provider, not just service providers, obviously, like you could do it if you're shipping products or whatever too. But like, I feel like especially service providers could definitely use that. And I haven't ever like intentionally done that, but I do have some rituals that aren't really spiritual that I could totally make spiritual for when
Yeah.
I'm creating content for myself and others. I know like if I have a lot of clients in one day, like say I need to do content for 4 clients in one day, between each client, I go for a walk and I just clear my mind. Or sometimes I will do like a handstand, which is so funny and random, but like it really does shift your perspective. And like sometimes I'm creating content for a photographer, sometimes I'm creating content for a coach. Like they're wildly different people. So I do have to kind of like shift that perspective and step into a new lens to be able to create the content for the next person, you know? And that's
Yeah.
just interesting because I've never intentionally made it like a spiritual practice, but I've just naturally kind of done that because I'm like, I need to break up my
Yeah.
day somehow.
Yeah, I think that's like exactly what I'm talking about, and it's the kind of thing that like if you were caught up in a sort of more like rigid logical structure with your business, kind of like sort of a more demanding structure with your business, you might think, oh, I don't have time for a walk, or it's silly to do the handstand. Whereas like the trust in the spirit really allows you to do those things. So I think it's especially helpful for people like me who tend to be more rigid to like give permission to do those things that you're doing naturally.
Yeah, definitely. And trust me, I can be so rigid. I can be an absolute menace.
Yeah,
Like,
I feel like we all fall into that.
yeah, sometimes I feel like it just depends on like how busy you are, which
Mm-hmm.
that shouldn't be, right? Like when you're
Right.
busier, that's when you really should lean into those things. But I do feel like it's when there's a lot of pressure to perform, a high level of workload or something like that, that's when I feel like it gets hard to do that. But that actually kind of guides me into my next question for you, which is how so if you're those are like kind of some spiritual like practices or whatever within your business, but if you're trying to find guidance, maybe somebody feels stuck or like they want to pivot, or maybe they're just confused, like in their business, how could they use spirituality to find clarity or their next move?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's probably where I use the spiritual piece in my business the most, because ostensibly a lot of us are spending a lot of time on social media, a lot of time on podcasts, taking in a lot of voices and ideas of what our business should be and what it should look like and what's trending and what works and what doesn't. And ultimately, the only person who knows what's best for your business is you. And it can be hiding under so many layers of other voices and conditioning and insecurity. And there are several spiritual tools that kind of allow you to access that deeper wisdom. Tarot being my favorite, my personal choice, but honestly also just like turning off social media, meditation, taking walks, just like getting quiet and getting back to the place. If you feel like, and a lot of us feel like our businesses were kind of like inspired ideas that came from above or in an unexplained way, getting back to the same or a similar mental state that you were in when you received some of your best ideas is going to put you in the place to receive your next best idea. So yes, you can hire a tarot reader to help you walk through it. You can learn tarot yourself. But just getting to know your own inner voice and getting to know how you best access it is going to be, I think, amongst the most valuable tools as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So like, one thing that's making me think of is kind of like going back to like your favorite moments in your business or your favorite offers or your favorite ideas. Maybe they're not even your most successful, but they're the ones that lit you up the most. Going back and then considering like where you were, what you were doing, what, like you said, your mental state, like what was up at that time could be really useful for helping to create those like patterns and rituals when you need them, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great, like, after this call, maybe I'll hop off and have that as my journal prompt for the day. I think that's a really good starting place.
Yeah, I love that. And I recorded with Natalie like a couple weeks ago. I think it will come out the week before this episode. But we talked about something similar where it's so noisy on social media. And so many of us are. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're using social media in some way, right? And it's so noisy, and that doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a really beautiful portal for you to get ideas, get inspired, learn, educate, all these things, grow your business. But at the same time, I do think that it gets too noisy quickly, and you definitely need to be able to step away from social media and clear your mind in order to get that inspired direction for what to post, where you want your business to go, what even you want to say, because it can get so easy to just like copy other people or just regurgitate what everyone else is saying when really you have a unique perspective. You just need to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may be that you go and you take a break from social media and get back in touch with yourself and you're still not sure. And then the first thing you log into inspires something in you, like it can come through so many different ways, and just relaxing into it and trusting the fact that you will find your way it can put you leagues ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question. So, a little bit with social media, but I think this is also just human nature to see other people being successful, doing what you want to be doing, but you can't get there or you're not there yet. What would you say to someone that's there? Like, do they just need to crack the code? What is it?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've spent so much time in this exact space. And the only thing that has helped me is time and learning to trust myself, learning to love myself. I think a lot of it's so exciting. Like, it's so exciting. I remember being like 14 years old, Instagram coming out, and we started to see like bloggers and influencers existing in a new way. Women were creating careers for themselves from scratch that did not exist before. They invented a whole new form of marketing. It was
Crazy.
so incredibly inspiring. Since the advent of Instagram, I knew I was going to be on Instagram building a career. And on the other hand, it can feel so strange when you're seeing all the success elevated in front of you and you're not experiencing that, and you think, what's wrong with me that I'm not amongst them when I'm working so hard and I'm believing so hard and trying so hard. And it really is just one, accepting and understanding that that success looks a million different ways. And it can look a million different ways even within your own life. And defining for yourself what success means. And then also just like taking your time. It could take years. It could take a long time to get to where you want to be, and you have a beautiful long life ahead of you. You don't have to be Forbes 30 under 30. You don't have to figure it out at 25, like, even though we see
Yeah.
other women doing it, you know?
Yeah, it sometimes exactly what you're saying, it can feel like you're doing it wrong, or like I think it puts people on a hamster wheel of trying to find a hack or something. Like that's what I often
Mm-hmm.
see on social media, is people being like, "Oh, I'm going to like hack my way, like I'm going to like do these certain hashtags and like post this certain amount of times, and like that's what's going to do it for me." And then that doesn't work, and it's so discouraging, and then they want to quit and give up, and it's like, but I think we forget that like for most people it's not like that. Like most people aren't Jenna Kutcher,
Right.
and you don't know what resources she truly had to get where she is too. And I think it's just like it can be so hard to not just think like, oh, I'm bad at this, like
Right.
I haven't seen the success fast enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the people that you see the most are obviously the ones who are getting the most views. Like, that's just math.
So true.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I think it can be, it can just be hard. But
Oh, there
have
was something I
you,
wanted to say.
oh yeah.
What you were saying about like trying to find like a hack. I've done this. I've like, well, you know, like people will sell their courses and they'll be like, this student made it to $1 million in their first year in the program, or so and so. You know, they have all these
Yeah.
amazing success stories, and I'm not saying they're not true, but every time I've signed up for one of these, I've been very excited and like fully believing that I would be one of the people who had the most incredible success story, and I never have. And to be sure, the programs helped. But for me, it's always been very slow, very incremental growth. That can change anytime, but just like seeing and accepting that that might be my path, it brings a lot of peace. There's not so much
Yeah.
comparison and pressure anymore now that I know that that's some people's path and it might be the best one for me.
Yes. Oh, I feel like I've recently had this breakthrough this year of a very similar thing where I see the courses where they're like, they made $1 million in a year. And I check in with myself and I say, do you want to make $1 million a year? Really, do you? Like, that sounds so cool, but is that really what you want? Or do you want more time off? Or I can't even totally explain the feeling, but I've also had this feeling a couple times where I'm like, you know, that could be for me in the future. Like, I honestly don't think I'm ready to handle that level of clientele. I don't think I'm ready to deal with the team that I'm going to have to hire to achieve that. Like, I don't think I'm there yet, and that's okay. Like, I can get there when I want to, and I don't need it to be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like a million ways you can improve the quality of your life without $1 million a year. Like there's so much to be done in the here and now.
It's so true. And I think the numbers, I have so much to say about this because it is like also a money mindset thing, which I'm sure you've done tons of different things on as well. But, and it's one of my goals for next year is to really like understand wealth and money and the energy of it. But I also don't think people realize how beautiful and wonderful and calm and peaceful their life could be with 100,000, 200,000. You know what I mean? You don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be $1 million. Yes. Like maybe that is what you want. And that's also totally like perfectly fine and awesome and cool. But like, have you considered that it doesn't have to be that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes, and I think this is actually a big part of money mindset, is like asking yourself, why do I want $1 million in a year? What would my life look like? What would that what would that fulfill for me? Like, which desire does that fulfill for me? And you find a lot of the time that it's actually like external validation. Like, I want to be
Yeah.
able to post that. I want so-and-so who told me I couldn't do it to be like, oh shit, she can. I want my ex-boyfriend to realize I'm hotter and more successful than him. And like, cool, if that's your thing, if you want to succeed out of spite, like, go for it.
Slay.
Yeah, like, I'm not gonna stand in your way. That sounds hot, but I think a lot of us would find that that's not very fulfilling in the long term. And
Yeah.
taking the time to get to the bottom of what your real desires are at your core will make your success so much sweeter when you do start hitting the numbers you've dreamed of.
Yeah, I was going to say like the success is sweeter and life is sweeter when like you do what you want to do, and like that really goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this, is that like, I mean, you can take all these courses, you can learn from all these people, but like at the end of the day, what do you want? Like what do you actually want? Because if what you really want is to uh work 4 hours a day and live in Australia, and I don't know, like if that's really what you want, then maybe that coaching program isn't actually for you,
Mm.
because that coaching program is going to teach you how to work 8-hour days and I don't know, stay home and you can't do much because you're tied to your laptop or whatever, which could be true or maybe it's not true. But I think like that's something we have to consider in our minds. And like that also makes it feel so much better. Like when you say, no, I don't want to take that course, or when you take a course and it doesn't end up being turning out the way you thought it would, it's not like the worst thing that's ever happened, because it's like, well, I've just made a different choice, and it's to not do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what makes like a journey of self-awareness so important. And it kind of ties back to our conversation about the role that spirituality can play in your business. Is it's exactly this, like, if you know yourself, whether that's through you're just like naturally born that cool, or you've done a lot of journaling and meditation, or you get to know your astrology chart, um, it can it can open up all these doors for peace and happiness and success that you couldn't have gotten without knowing who you are and what your values are.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, my next question for you is, how do we say like people are mirrors, like everything's a mirror. How do you feel like that shows up in people's businesses?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I want to be careful here because, like, I don't necessarily believe that, like, if you're like so aligned and so spiritual and so tapped in, then you will be so successful at everything and so rich and abundant. And like, we get sold that all the time.
Oh, yeah, we do. And it
It's
just,
that.
honestly, it just gives me anxiety because I have anxiety. And so it makes me feel like I'm doing everything wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's like, well, that's what it teaches you, is that like if you have a failed launch or something, that you're like doing something wrong deeper, like in your soul, and that's so messed up. Like, failure
That's
is
like
actually
spiritual
just part of the path.
trauma.
Absolutely, it is. I really do think it comes from this like prosperity gospel, like kind of very typical Western religion. Like, I really think it's just leaking out of the kind of evangelical sphere
It
into
is,
what
because
we're doing now.
I mean, what you're telling me is just taking me back to like, I grew up Mormon, and it's the same thing. Like, if your life is bad, it's because you're not being like spiritual enough or like holy enough, or you've sinned or something. And it's like, that is so traumatic to tell people that they can just, I guess, be perfect and then life will go perfect. But like, that's just literally not true.
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree. And I also grew up Mormon. And yeah, it's very tricky in the LDS church because it is run by very rich people. And they tend to give the positions of power to the wealthier members. So then you kind of set up this idea that spirituality and wealth go so extremely hand in hand. And that's, of course, not the case. There are
Yeah,
people
I love that
from
you
all
said that.
walks of life, like connected to God on different levels and all along the spectrum of poverty and wealth. But to
Yeah.
answer your question about your business being a mirror, um, I would, if you can, like, look at it in a healthier way, like if you can come at it from like a more balanced perspective, um, there are things that your business can tell you. Like, for example, if you are not getting views, you could entertain the idea that it may have something to do with an unwillingness to be seen, right? And it's not necessarily that, but it's at very least a starting point or a journal prompt. Like, is there a connection
Yeah.
here? Can I explore that connection?
Yeah, I definitely think, especially that example that you've shared, I do see that a lot in myself and clients. I had one experience earlier this year where I work with some big influencers, and so I'm logged into their accounts. I see what people say about them.
Mm,
And let me tell you, these people are not problematic. They have done nothing wrong. They don't deserve this. And I see those comments, and I've told my partner so many times, like, I don't know how they do this. Like, I couldn't do that. I feel bad
yeah,
reading the comments that they get. Um, and sometimes, obviously, it's not all the time, but just depends on the content, right?
yeah.
And I remember noticing that and then thinking to myself, like, I could never be seen by as many people that see them because I
Mm-hmm.
can't handle that.
Yeah,
And then I had a moment and I thought, okay, well, do you want to go viral? Because if you do, be prepared for that many people to see you. And then I kind of worked through that in a bit of a meditation, I would say. And I decided, I'm okay with it. If people don't like me, that's okay.
mm-hmm.
If they want to leave me a mean comment, that's okay. And then I had like literally 3 or 4 posts go viral within like a couple weeks of each other.
Wow.
And my account doubled. Like, it was crazy, right?
I'm
And
gonna
it
do
was
that.
just, yeah, it was such a clear moment for me of being like, you are never going to be seen by that many people if you're not ready for it. And I think
Yeah,
that's just like a theme that can be in your business in so many ways. It could be views being seen. It could also be business growth. It's like, if you can't imagine yourself making 100K, like, you're probably not going to, because you're
yeah,
going to block any opportunity to do that.
yeah. Well,
Um,
the two examples you gave are really similar. The $1 million feeling not ready for $1 million and feeling not ready for
yeah,
those views, and it's like either you or your angel's just protecting yourself from something you're not ready for. But in that second example, you figured out you were ready,
yeah.
and I think we only get a few of those like dramatic like day to night differences, and but it can prop up your beliefs in the meantime. You know now that you have power over your reality, and that's really special.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it was amazing to me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, I did it. I did the manifestation. I like playing with manifesting like that a little bit, where I like kind of make it more of a game. Like, okay, I'm ready now. Let's see what will
Yeah.
happen. Because if it gets too serious, again, it dips into that like religious trauma for me, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it. If it's not working, I'm doing it wrong. It's like, no, you're
Yeah.
not. You're fine. Just chill. Um, but I think the fear of being seen definitely does hold people back in their lives and in their businesses. And I would love to be able to coach people through that. But honestly, like, I think it's just something that you have to, it's very personal. Like, you just have to decide on your own terms, on your own time, when you're ready for people to see you as you are.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurship such a spiritual journey. It's just like the little points like that, and that you like really can't get through it without the self-reflection piece.
I would love to hear if you have a personal story with anything like this, where like maybe a guide gave you direction, or you had a personal experience with breaking through something, or even maybe it was just you starting your business.
Yeah. Let's see. Um I feel like the major breakthroughs I've had, unfortunately, I mean, they're like absolutely the ones I needed to have, and I'm grateful for my journey. I just always wanted these big breakthroughs that resulted in a huge increase in income or followers or something tangible. And for me, it's always just been when I have these breakthroughs, what I get instead is an increased sense of self-worth, peace, integrity. Those are obviously the foundation that I want in my life. But it's funny how we can like
Yes.
pick the things we want. Be like, no, actually, I'd actually rather have 6 figures right now rather than all this peace. But thank you. um, I feel so.
Oh, I love that.
I've had like a very winding entrepreneurial journey where I started out in a product-based business that went under, and now I'm doing design and tarot, and it's all like kind of like messy. Like I don't feel like it's all come together in the way that it's meant to yet, but I feel like every time I sit down in prayer or in ritual and I'm able to make a decision from that place of peace, um, I gain confidence knowing that I'm headed in the right direction and that it all will add up to something. And that is extremely valuable. And at this point, I wouldn't trade it for the 6 figure salary. You know, it's
Yeah.
exactly what I needed, and it's exactly what I need to get wherever the hell I'm going. I'm excited to see where it is.
Oh my gosh, me too. You're incredible. I love watching you, and it's so fun to hear actually that story from you where you're saying like, yeah, I would rather have this than that, but like probably the piece is building that foundation for you ultimately, you know?
I believe
Um
that.
and I recently I've obviously been going through life changes, and that has come with, you know, I've been saving for a wedding, all these things. And one thing that I have just been repeating over and over in my mind is everything is working out in my favor. Like it's working
Mm-hmm.
out in my favor. That doesn't mean the fact that when I ironed my veil this morning, it melted. I was like,
No,
what a,
no.
like, I literally was just like, okay, like I'm not going to be upset. I refuse to be upset. I'm going to order one on Amazon. It's going to be fine. Veils are literally a piece of tulle glued to a
Mm,
clip. Like it's not
yeah,
that deep. Um, and you know what? I bet you I'm going to like the one that I got from Amazon better than the one that I bought from Etsy weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's just, I think you really do have so much control over how you react to those things. And it's the
mm-hmm.
same in your business. And it starts in my business where I'm just like, it's working out in my favor. If a client leaves me, that there's only one thing. There's room for another. There's room for
Yeah,
another bigger, better client. It's always just working out in my favor. I have no
yeah,
reason to believe it's not.
yeah,
And that has been really helpful just with calming my anxiety around things, or when I'm not hitting the goal, the arbitrary goal that I've set for myself. I'm just like, it's just building. I don't
yeah,
know. Like it'll show up when I'm ready. Like it's all
yeah.
good.
And it's such a beautiful outlook, and like it makes such a difference in how you feel day to day. I'm going through some major life changes as well. And I had a friend tell me like it's okay to be like mad at God about this. It's okay to shake your fist at the sky. I'm like, I'm sure it is okay. It would just be so, what's the word, disingenuous. Like it I've seen God land me in better and better and better spots all the time, and even the challenges like
Yeah.
led me to somewhere better. So like I just can't, like it would be a lie. It would be a lie if I was like, if I acted angry about this or like, why is this happening? It's like I don't know why it's happening, but I understand that I will, and that I'll be very grateful for it.
Oh, and I feel like that's a hard place to be in for a lot of people. Like a lot of people really get caught in like that victim mindset, which I've so been there. I battle
Yeah.
it too.
And to be sure, sometimes we are victims. Like
Totally. I mean, sometimes you just are like
yeah.
that, period. Sometimes a bad thing happens to you that was unwarranted and doesn't make sense, and it sucks and it's horrible. And maybe it doesn't have a meaning. You're like, that was awful. What
Yeah,
the hell?
absolutely.
And I think when those things happen, it's just like I don't know what else to do besides move forward. That's how I feel. Cause I'm just like, I can't possibly sit in this energy of everything being so bad. Like,
Right.
I think my fiance is always like, thinks I'm crazy because I'm like, I'll have a meltdown and then I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, I am
Yeah.
literally so good, like unstoppable. And I'm like, I just had to be mad for a second and now I'm fine. Like, I can get over it so fast if I'm just like, this is stupid. This is whatever. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, well, because you have that deeper belief that you are always on the right path, right? Like, you can express your emotion and move through them without them derailing you because you've done the work to build that foundation.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last thing before we wrap up, are there any rituals that you really recommend? I know we already talked about like tarot and meditation and stuff like that, but do you have any recommendations for people?
Yeah, the one I think that like everybody could benefit from is doing something intentionally to like open your workday and close it. Because as entrepreneurs, like it can leak into your whole life.
Yeah.
Which again, like if that's your style, do your thing. But if you're working towards better boundaries and work-life balance, then like starting out with like a little card pull, or even just like close your eyes, deep breath, turning on a specific playlist or candle to like open the seal on the day and then intentionally close it at the end. I think that's a great starting place. Very low effort and will do like wonders when it comes to making a difference in how engaged you are when you are working and how engaged you are in your life when you're not.
I really love that. I think that's so important. It's funny, I don't have anything like that, but I've noticed that my fiance does. When he works on music, he always like he sits down, he lights his candle, like he goes into his little like ritual portal of like, okay, I'm gonna like make music now, and then he closes it down, and he's really good at that, and he's watched me be bad at it, and like he's like, okay, like you need to close your laptop, like moving on. Are you even working? No, like you want something to chew on. Just stop.
Right.
And it's, I've never actually connected those until you said that, but I think that's probably has to do with why it's easy for him to shift in and out of those zones, is because he does kind of have that ritual built out. So I love that so much.
Thanks.
Amazing. Okay, one last question before I let you go. If you could give your younger self, and it could be really any age, any piece of advice, what would you tell her?
I would tell the younger version of myself basically from the ages of like 12 to 25 to chill the fuck out. I was so, and still have this tendency to live like I'm several years older than I am, to have extremely high expectations of myself, to wish I was further along than I was, to act like I'm further along than I am. And there's time for everything. Every season has its gifts. So lean in, focus on the gifts of your season, and stop chasing after the gifts of the next one.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That is just about the most relatable thing I have ever heard.
I feel like we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm like, are you me? What's your star sign?
I'm a Libra sun, Libra moon, Cancer rising. What are you?
Okay,
I feel like you're a fire sign.
I'm a Capricorn sun, okay. Capricorn rising, Scorpio moon.
Oh, I actually knew this about you. We talked about it in your reading.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's my sign. I don't know what it is, but very similar to you. Just always like people would always be like, "Oh, you seem so much older," and all of my friends are 35 and I'm 25. Like I'm 26 now, but like it's always been that way for me, and so I've always felt like same as you, just in those younger years, just feeling like I have to be in the next phase of life. Yeah. And it's just crazy how you do that to yourself, because it's like everyone else is just everyone's just being 25 and you're being 30. Why?
Yeah, like you will get to be 30. Don't worry, it's coming.
Why are you trying to get there so fast.
Yeah.
No, I'm so with you on that. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and being on the podcast today. It was so lovely talking to you. And if you guys are listening to this podcast and you're like, wait, I need to work with her. First of all, of course, her branding, design, all of that is very beautiful. But also her tarot readings are incredible and transformative. So make sure you book one of those.
I appreciate that so much, Jaiden. Thank you so much for having me on, and congrats on your engagement and your wedding. I'm very excited to see all that happen for you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.